The hum of the air conditioner was a constant, sterile soundtrack to my life. It was the sound of controlled temperature, of filtered air, of a world meticulously curated to appear perfect. My world. Or rather, the world I was about to marry into. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window of my penthouse apartment, a gift from my fiancé Mark, and looked down at the city sprawling beneath me like a glittering, indifferent beast. In 12 hours I would stand at the end of a rose-petal-strewn aisle and become Mrs. Mark Sterling. The thought should have sent thrills of anticipation through me. Instead it left me with a hollow, cold feeling in the pit of my stomach. My wedding dress, a breathtaking confection of Italian lace and silk, hung from a padded hanger on the ornate bedroom door. Cost more than my first car. It was a dress for a princess in a fairy tale, and I was supposed to be the star of that story. Mark was handsome, successful, from a family whose name opened doors I never knew existed. He was the answer to my mother's fervent prayers, a balm to the constant, quiet anxiety that had plagued our middle-class existence after my father left. Marrying Mark meant security. It meant never having to worry again. It was a sensible, brilliant match. So why did it feel like I was preparing for my own execution? I traced the cool glass of the window with my finger. 5 years ago my life was a riot of color and noise. It smelled of oil paints and turpentine, of cheap coffee and the damp earth of the community garden where Liam and I would steal kisses between the tomato plants. Liam, my childhood sweetheart. The boy with grass stains on his knees and a universe of dreams in his eyes. We were going to be artists, to travel the world with backpacks and sketchbooks, to build a life out of passion and laughter, not stock portfolios and social calendars. But life, as it so often does, had other plans. My mother's illness, a terrifying brush with cancer that drained our savings, coincided with Liam's big break, a prestigious year-long artist's residency in Berlin. He begged me to come with him. I couldn't. I had to stay to work to help my mother. The fight was brutal, a collision of two different kinds of love and duty. He said I was choosing fear over us. I said he was asking me to abandon my family. We broke on the sharp edges of those unanswerable questions. He left for Berlin. I took a job at a corporate art gallery where I met Mark. Mark was stability. He was a fortress in the storm of my life. He didn't just quiet my anxieties, he built soundproof walls around them. With him there was no chaos, no uncertainty. And in my grief over losing Liam, that felt like a kind of love. A safe, quiet love. A soft chime from my phone pulled me from my thoughts. A text from my half-sister, Chloe. Thinking of you, big sis. So excited for tomorrow. Can't wait to see you become Mrs. Fancy Pants. Winking face, I'm just finishing up my toast for the rehearsal dinner. See you soon. Hugs and kisses. I smiled, a genuine one this time. Chloe was the one sparkling real thing in this gilded cage. We had different fathers and had grown up mostly apart, but in the last few years, we'd grown incredibly close. She was my maid of honor, my confidant. She was the one who'd held my hand when I voiced my doubts about Mark, who told me it was just pre-wedding jitters. She was vibrant and funny, everything I used to be. Her presence in my life felt like a tether to my old self. The rehearsal dinner was a perfectly orchestrated event at the city's most exclusive rooftop restaurant. Mark was impeccable in his custom-tailored suit, his smile a flawless, practiced thing. He held my hand, his grip firm and possessive. He gave a speech that was charming and witty, praising my grace and beauty, thanking our families. It was a masterpiece of social performance. Everyone was captivated. Everyone but me. I felt like I was watching a play and I was an actress who had forgotten her lines. Later, as the party swirled around me, I found a moment of quiet near the balcony. The night air was cool against my skin. I slipped my hand into the small clutch I carried, my fingers brushing against the familiar worn leather of my old sketchbook. I always carried it, a secret, silly comfort. A tether. Inside were drawings of Liam, of us, of a life that felt a million miles away. Nervous? A soft voice asked. I turned to see Chloe, her eyes bright with champagne and affection. She linked her arm with mine. A little, I admitted, closing the clutch. Does it ever feel too perfect to you? She laughed, a light, tinkling sound. Oh, stop. You deserve perfect. Mark adores you. He's a rock. You're lucky. Lucky, I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Is that what this was? Speaking of the rock, Chloe said, her eyes drifting over my shoulder. He's looking for you. And he has your mother in tow. She looks like she's about to burst with pride. I followed her gaze. Mark was indeed scanning the crowd, his expression mild but his eyes sharp. My mother was beside him, beaming. The weight of their collective expectations settled on my shoulders, heavy as a lead cloak. I should go, I said, forcing a smile. Go on, Chloe squeezed my arm. I'll see you back at the penthouse later. I left my overnight bag there. We can have one last sisterly gossip session before you become a married woman. I nodded, my throat tight. As I walked towards Mark and my mother, I felt a sudden desperate urge to run. To flee the sterile air, the perfect smiles, the predetermined future. But I didn't. I just kept walking, putting one manicured foot in front of the other, playing my part. Back at the penthouse, the silence was deafening. Chloe hadn't arrived yet. The place was a monument to Mark's taste. All cool grays, chrome and abstract art that cost a fortune but held no meaning. There were no personal photos, no messy stacks of books, no evidence of a life lived. It was a showroom. I walked over to the dress, letting the delicate lace slip through my fingers. This was it. Tomorrow I would walk down that aisle. I would say the vows. I would seal my fate. A sound from the hallway made me jump. It was probably Chloe finally arriving. I decided to go and tease her for taking so long. Maybe we could order greasy pizza, a final act of rebellion against the canapés and champagne. I padded softly down the long dark hallway towards the guest wing. The door to the main guest suite was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling onto the plush carpet. I was about to push it open and call her name when I heard it. A low, intimate murmur. A man's voice. It wasn't Chloe on the phone. It was Mark. My blood ran cold. What was he doing in the guest wing? A prickle of unease, sharp and instinctual, danced down my spine. I moved closer, silent as a ghost, and peered through the crack in the door. The world stopped. There in the center of the room stood Mark. And he wasn't alone. He was holding Chloe. But not in a brotherly, comforting way. His arms were wrapped around her, his face buried in her neck. And she was holding him back, her fingers tangled in his hair, a soft, contented smile on her face. A smile I had always thought was reserved for me. "Shoo, it's okay," she was whispering, her voice thick with an emotion I wouldn't, place. "Just one more day. Then everything will be the way it's supposed to be." Mark pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. "I know. But God, Chloe, it's killing me. Having to stand up there tomorrow and pretend she's the one I want. When all I can think about is you." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a gasp. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. This wasn't happening. It was a nightmare, a terrible, twisted dream. I saw Mark lean in and kiss her. It wasn't a chaste, fleeting kiss. It was deep, passionate, full of a hunger I had never seen from him. It was the kiss he should have been saving for me at the end of that rose-petal-strewn aisle. The world, my world, the carefully constructed, gilded cage, shattered into a million jagged pieces. And I was left standing in the ruins, completely and utterly alone. Time became a syrupy, nightmare substance. The scene in the guest room played on a loop behind my eyes. The intimacy of their embrace, the softness in Chloe's voice, the raw hunger in Mark's kiss. The words, "Pretend she's the one I want," were branded onto my soul. I stood frozen in the dark hallway, my body numb, my mind a screaming void. I didn't know how long I stood there. Could have been seconds, it could have been an hour. The sound of their laughter, low and conspiratorial, finally broke the spell. It was the sound of my annihilation, and they found it funny. A raw, animal sound tore from my throat, a sob I couldn't contain. I clapped my hand over my mouth again, but it was too late. The laughter from the room ceased. There was a sharp, startled silence, followed by a frantic shuffling. The door swung open, flooding the hallway with light. Mark stood there, his shirt rumpled, his face a mask of panicked guilt. Behind him, Chloe was hastily smoothing down her dress, her cheeks flushed, her eyes wide with a deer-in-the-headlights terror. "Alara? Sweetheart." Mark's voice was strained, an attempt at normalcy that was grotesque under the circumstances. "What are you doing out here?" I couldn't speak. I could only stare, my gaze darting from his guilty face to Chloe's stricken one. The woman I had called my sister. The man I was to marry in mere hours. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, it felt like a physical sickness. My stomach churned. Elara, it's not what it looks like, Chloe stammered, taking a step forward, her hand outstretched. That cliché, that pathetic lying cliché finally unlocked my voice. Not what it looks like? My words were a ragged whisper. It looks like my fiancé is kissing my half-sister, the night before our wedding in my home. What other possible interpretation could there be, Chloe? Were you practicing for the ceremony? Mark ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture of frustration I knew well. Elara, let's be calm about this. Let's go into the living room and talk. Calm. The word erupted from me, loud and sharp in the silent penthouse. You want me to be calm? I just saw you with her, and you want to talk? I was shaking, tremors racking my entire body. The cold numbness was being burned away by a rising incandescent fury. It was a mistake, Mark said, his voice taking on a harder edge. The guilt was being replaced by his default setting, control. A moment of weakness. The stress of the wedding. Don't, I cut him off, my voice trembling with rage. Don't you dare blame this on stress. I heard you. Pretend she's the one I want. How long, Mark? How long has this been going on? Chloe looked at the floor, tears now streaming down her face. They were tears of shame, or maybe just tears of being caught. I didn't know anymore. I didn't know her at all. Mark's jaw tightened. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not the charming fiancé, but the ruthless businessman beneath. The man who always got what he wanted. This is neither the time nor the place for this discussion, Elara. We have over 300 guests arriving tomorrow. There is a contract. There are expectations. A contract. He reduced our marriage to a contract. The hollowness I'd felt for months now made a terrible, brutal sense. I was a business acquisition. A suitable partner to complement his portfolio. And Chloe was what? The mistress? The real love he couldn't publicly acknowledge because she wasn't from the right world? The irony was so bitter it made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. There is no wedding, I said, my voice surprisingly steady now. The path was clear, horrifying but clear. It's over. You're being hysterical, Mark snapped. You're not thinking clearly. We will discuss this in the morning after you've had some sleep. He took a step towards me and I flinched back as if he'd brandished a weapon. The thought of him touching me made my skin crawl. Don't come near me, I whispered. Either of you. I turned and fled down the hallway back towards the living room. I heard them following, their voices a low, urgent murmur behind me. I didn't care. I went straight to my purse, pulling out my phone with shaking hands. My first instinct was to call my mother, but the thought of explaining this, of her devastated disappointment, made me feel faint. I couldn't. I scrolled through my contacts, my vision blurry with tears I refused to shed in front of them. I had to call the wedding planner, the caterer, the florist, the band. I had to call everyone and tell them the wedding was off. The sheer, monumental scale of the humiliation washed over me, a tidal wave of shame and anger. What are you doing? Mark asked, his voice dangerously quiet as he and Chloe entered the room. What does it look like I'm doing? I said, my thumb hovering over the wedding planner's number. I'm ending this circus. You will do no such thing, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Think of the scandal. Think of your mother. The embarrassment will destroy her. He was using my love for my mother as a weapon. And it was an effective one. The thought of her face, of the whispers and the pity made me hesitate. It was Chloe who spoke next, her voice small and broken. Elara, please. I'm so sorry. This happened. We never meant to hurt you. I turned to look at her, really look at her. The sister I'd shared secrets with, laughed with, trusted implicitly. The person I thought was my ally in this cold, gilded world. And I saw a stranger. A pretty, treacherous stranger. Get out, I said, my voice low. Elara, Mark began. Get out. I screamed, the sound raw and primal. I picked up a crystal vase from the side table, a hideously expensive piece he'd bought at an auction, and hurled it at the wall behind them. It exploded in a shower of glass and water, the stems of white orchids scattering across the floor like fallen soldiers. They both jumped back, stunned into silence by my outburst. I was stunned too. I had never been a violent person. But the woman I was an hour ago was dead. This new woman, born from betrayal, was capable of anything. In the ringing silence that followed the shattering vase, a new sound emerged. The distinct, melodic chime of the doorbell. We all froze. Who could that be at this hour? It was past midnight. Mark's eyes narrowed. Are you expecting someone? I shook my head, my heart hammering against my ribs. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Cautiously, Mark walked to the intercom screen by the door. He pressed the button. Yes. Who is it? The screen was angled away from me, but I saw the color drain from Mark's face. His posture stiffened. A familiar voice, one I hadn't heard in years but would recognize anywhere, filtered through the speaker, laced with a wry amusement that was uniquely his. Mark. Long time. I'm here for Alara. Heard there was a party tomorrow. Thought I'd crash it. It was Liam. My legs gave way. I had to grab the back of the sofa to steady myself. Liam. Here. No. Of all the moments in time, he had to walk back into my life in the middle of its absolute destruction. Mark turned to look at me, his expression a complex mix of fury, confusion, and disdain. Is your artist friend? Chloe looked between us, bewildered. The world had gone completely, utterly mad. Let him in, I heard myself say. My voice was a ghost of a sound. Mark hesitated, his jaw clenched. But after a moment he pressed the buzzer to unlock the main entrance downstairs. The silence in the penthouse was heavier than ever, thick with the weight of shattered dreams and the shocking arrival of a ghost from the past. The wait for the elevator to climb to our floor was an eternity. I could hear the soft, mechanical whirring, each second stretching out like taffy. I didn't look at Mark or Chloe. I just stared at the elevator doors, my mind a perfect, terrified blank. Finally, a soft ding announced its arrival. The polished brass doors slid open. And there he was. Liam. He looked older. The boyish softness was gone, replaced by the harder lines of a man. He was taller than I remembered, or maybe he just carried himself with more assurance. He wore a worn leather jacket, jeans, and a pair of scuffed boots, a stark contrast to Mark's pristine elegance. His dark hair was a little too long, curling over his collar, and he had a faint shadow of stubble on his jaw. But his eyes were the same. A clear, piercing green, and right now they were taking in the scene with an artist's sharp, assessing gaze. He saw the wedding dress on the door. He saw the shattered vase and the strewn flowers. He saw Mark rigid with anger and Chloe weeping quietly. And then his eyes found me standing pale and trembling by the sofa. A slow, grim smile touched his lips. Well, he said, his voice a low rumble that filled the silent room. Looks like I got the date wrong. Seems the real drama was tonight. No one moved. No one spoke. We were a frozen tableau of betrayal and shock, with Liam as the unexpected, chaotic new element. His presence was a physical force, disrupting the sterile, controlled atmosphere of the penthouse. He brought the scent of the night air and a world of messy, unpredictable reality with him. Mark found his voice first, the master of his domain reasserting control. Liam. This is a private matter. It's not a good time. Liam ignored him completely. His gaze was locked on me, seeing past the expensive cocktail dress, the professionally styled hair, the mask of composure I was desperately trying to hold on to. He saw the shattered woman beneath. Alara, he said, my name a question and a statement on his lips. You okay? The simple, direct question broke me. A sob escaped, harsh and ugly. I shook my head, wrapping my arms around myself as if I could physically hold the pieces of my soul together. Liam's expression darkened. He took a step into the room, his eyes sweeping over Mark and Chloe with a cold contempt that made me shiver. What did they do? This is none of your business, Mark said, stepping forward, positioning himself between Liam and me. It was a possessive, territorial move that made my skin crawl. I think you should leave. I asked Alara a question. Liam said, his voice dangerously quiet. He didn't back down an inch. The boy I'd known had been passionate, sometimes hot-headed, but this man was different. He was grounded, solid. A rock, but not the cold, immovable kind like Mark. A rock you could build a fire beside, a shelter from the storm. She's my fiancé, Mark spat. Doesn't look like it, Liam replied, his gaze flicking to the tears streaming down my face. Looks like she's a woman in a room with two people who've hurt her. And I'm not leaving until I'm sure she's safe. The word safe hung in the air. Was I safe? Physically, of course. But emotionally, psychologically, I felt like I was free falling and the ground was nowhere in sight. Liam, please, I managed to choke out. Just go. It's humiliating. He finally looked away from Mark and back at me, his expression softening. There's no humiliation in being betrayed by people who should have loved you, Alara. The shame is theirs, not yours. His words were a bomb, a lifeline thrown into my personal hell. He saw it. He understood it immediately without needing an explanation. Chloe made a small, pathetic sound. We didn't mean, it was a mistake. Liam's head snapped towards her. Shut up, he said with such flat, unvarnished finality that she actually flinched and fell silent. He had no patience for her tears, for their excuses. In that moment he was my avenger, my knight in a leather jacket, and I had never been more grateful for anyone in my entire life. I'm calling security, Mark said, pulling out his phone. Go ahead, Liam shrugged. I'd love to explain to them why the groom-to-be was caught with the maid of honor the night before the wedding. Makes for a great headline. Sterling scandal. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Mark's finger hesitated over the screen. His family's reputation was everything. A public scene was his worst nightmare. He was trapped. Liam used his hesitation to his advantage. He walked past Mark as if he weren't even there and came to stand in front of me. He didn't touch me, just stood close, a solid, warm presence between me and the wreckage of my life. What do you need, Alara? He asked, his voice low, for my ears only. Do you want me to take you out of here? The offer was so simple, so profound. An escape. A way out of this gilded cage that had become a torture chamber. I looked over his shoulder at Mark's furious, impotent face, at Chloe's tear-streaked, guilty one. I looked at the wedding dress, a symbol of a life that was a lie. The desire to flee was a physical ache. But then my mother's face swam before my eyes. The guests. The scandal. The sheer logistical nightmare of calling it all off. The weight of it was paralyzing. I have to call off the wedding, I whispered, my voice breaking. I have to call everyone. Liam studied my face for a long moment. I saw the gears turning behind his eyes, that quick creative mind assessing the problem from every angle. Then a slow, audacious and utterly mad idea dawned on his face. A faint, reckless smile touched his lips. Or, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, a conspiratorial glint in his eye, you don't. I stared at him, bewildered. What? You don't call it off. Liam, did you not just witness everything? I can't marry him. I know you can't, he said, his gaze intense, holding mine. But think about it. The church is booked. The guests are invited. The flowers are paid for. The press will be there. He glanced back at Mark, whose confusion was now mirroring my own. He's so worried about his reputation. About the scandal. A cold knot of understanding began to form in my stomach. What are you saying? Liam's smile widened, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man about to launch a revolution. Let the wedding happen. Mark took a step forward. What the hell are you talking about, Sawyer? He took a step closer, closing the final distance between us. He didn't touch me, but his presence was an embrace. Marry me instead. The words hung in the air, so impossible, so utterly ludicrous, that for a moment I thought the shock of the night had finally caused me to hallucinate. What? The syllable was a breathless gasp, not just from me but from Chloe and Mark as well. Liam didn't flinch. He didn't smile. His gaze was unwavering, deadly serious. You heard me, Alara. Marry me. Tomorrow. At your wedding. A hysterical laugh bubbled in my throat, but it died before it could escape. He was serious. He was completely, terrifyingly serious. You're insane, Mark finally spluttered, finding his voice. That's the most pathetic, desperate thing I've ever heard. She's not going to throw her life away on a penniless artist who shows up out of the blue. This is a joke. Liam finally turned his head, a slow, predatory movement, to look at Mark. But his anger was gone, replaced by a chilling calm. He was no longer the passionate ex-lover. He was a strategist assessing the battlefield. You're right, Sterling, Liam said, his voice deceptively mild. It's an insane idea. And right now, Alara is hurt and angry and not thinking clearly. He looked back at me and I saw the faintest, almost imperceptible wink. A signal. Play along. My confusion must have been plain on my face, but I stayed silent, trusting him. What she needs, Liam continued, turning his placating tone back to Mark and Chloe, is time. Space to process this, without the two of you in her face. This he gestured between them, is a lot. To expect her to make a rational decision about calling off a 300-person wedding at midnight is unfair. Mark looked suspicious, but he was also a man who understood negotiation. He saw a potential off-ramp from this immediate disaster. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you both leave. Right now, Liam said, his voice firm but reasonable. Give her the night. Let her sleep on it. Let her show up at the church tomorrow or not. But let it be her decision made with a clear head, not in the heat of this ugliness. He was offering them a way out. A chance to avoid a messy, immediate explosion. He was appealing to Mark's sense of control and Chloe's desperation to avoid a scene. And you? Mark asked, his eyes narrowed. You'll stay here with her? I'll stay, Liam confirmed. As a friend. To make sure she's okay. That's all you should be concerned about right now, isn't it? Her well-being. He layered the question with just enough sarcasm to be convincing. Mark studied him, then me. I forced my expression into one of overwhelmed distress, pressing a hand to my forehead. It wasn't hard. Fine, Mark bit out, making a show of being the reasonable one. This is highly irregular. But fine. Alara, we will talk in the morning. I trust you'll see sense. His words were a threat wrapped in silk. Chloe looked desperately from Mark to me. Alara, please, I'm so. Just go, Chloe, I whispered, putting all the broken betrayal I felt into my voice. That, more than anything, seemed to convince them. They saw a heartbroken woman, not a vengeful plotter. With one last hate-filled glance at Liam, Mark turned and shepherded a weeping Chloe out of the penthouse. The door clicked shut. The second they were gone, the tension in Liam's shoulders eased. He let out a long, slow breath and turned to me. The silence they left behind was profound. The click of the penthouse door closing on Mark's furious, pallid face and Chloe's weeping form felt like the closing of a tomb on my old life. For a long moment, Liam and I just stood there in the center of the vast, silent living room, our hands still clasped, surrounded by the glittering evidence of a future that would never be. Then the adrenaline that had been holding me upright vanished. My legs buckled. Liam's arm was around my waist in an instant, holding me steady. Whoa, easy there, he murmured, his voice a low rumble against my ear. It's okay. I've got you. Then he said, I wasn't joking, marry me instead. He turned back to me, his voice softening but losing none of its intensity. I know it's crazy. I know it makes no sense. But nothing about this, he gestured around the room, makes sense. You were going to build a life with a lie. I'm asking you to take a chance on a truth. What truth? I whispered, my mind reeling. Liam, we haven't seen each other in 5 years. Our truth, it's in the past. Is it? He challenged, his eyes searching mine. Then why did I dream about you last week? Why did I finish a painting that looked so much like you it scared me? Why, when I heard you were getting married, did I get on a plane without a second thought? I have a show opening in Berlin in 3 days, Alara. I should be there. But I'm here. Because some part of me, the part that never stopped loving you, knew this was wrong. Knew he was wrong for you. His words were arrows, each one striking a target deep within me, awakening a part of my soul I had buried and left for dead. The part that believed in destiny, in passion, in love that was messy and real and overwhelming. This is love. I gestured wildly between him and me. This is chaos. Yes, he said, a fierce light in his eyes. It is. It's messy and it's unpredictable and it's terrifying. It's not safe. It's not a business contract. It's a leap of faith. And I am asking you to take that leap with me. Tomorrow. Why? I asked him, the core of the question. Why would you do this? For revenge. He shook his head, a sad smile touching his lips. No. Not for revenge. For us. For the us that never got a fighting chance. This is our second chance, Alara. It's falling out of the sky, dressed in the most fucked up circumstances imaginable, but it's here. I am here. And I am asking you to be my wife. Tears were streaming down my face freely now, but they were different tears. They weren't tears of hurt or humiliation. They were tears of catharsis. Of possibility. I turned to Liam. The world was spinning, my future a blank page waiting for a single, decisive stroke. How? I asked, my voice trembling but clear. How would it even work? A brilliant, triumphant smile broke across Liam's face, the the first real unguarded expression I'd seen from him since he'd arrived. It transformed him, wiping away the years and the hardness, and for a second he was the boy from the community garden again. "We go to the church," he said, his words coming faster now, fueled by adrenaline and hope. "We don't say a word to anyone. You walk down that aisle. And when you get to the end, you don't go to him. You come to me. We look the priest in the eye and we tell him there's been a change of plan." "The license," I said. "We need a marriage license." Liam's smile didn't fade. He reached into the inside pocket of his leather jacket and pulled out a small, official-looking document folded neatly. He unfolded it and held it up. It was a marriage license. From the county clerk's office. Issued today. My jaw dropped. "I told you I had a feeling," Liam said, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "When I landed this afternoon, before I even came to find you, I went downtown. I stood in line. I filled out the paperwork. I paid the fee. I had no idea if you'd even see me. I had no plan. It was just a hope. A crazy, stupid hope. That was the moment. The moment I knew. This wasn't a whim. This wasn't just about revenge. He had come back for me. He had, against all reason and logic, prepared for a possibility that only existed in the realm of dreams. He had gotten a marriage license. For us." I looked at Liam, really looked at him. At the man who painted his feelings, who followed his gut, who loved with a ferocity that was terrifying and beautiful. The man who had just handed me the power to rewrite my own story, to turn my greatest humiliation into my ultimate triumph. The hollow feeling in my stomach was gone. In its place was a wild, fluttering, terrifying excitement. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the air tasting clean and new for the first time in years. I stepped forward, away from the wreckage of my old life, away from Mark and Chloe, and I placed my hand in Liam's. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong and sure. He guided me to the large, uncomfortable designer sofa and I sank into it, my body trembling with the aftershocks. I buried my face in my hands, trying to process the cataclysm of the last hour. The betrayal. The rage. The impossible, mad proposition. The decision that had just sent my life careening down a path I could never have imagined. "I need a drink," I mumbled into my palms. "A real one." Liam gave a soft, understanding chuckle. "I'll see what the esteemed Mr. Sterling has in his bar." He moved to the polished chrome bar cart in the corner. I heard the clink of glass. He returned it. Moment later with 2 heavy crystal tumblers, half full of a rich amber liquid. He handed one to me. "Scotch. Neat. Seems appropriate for the occasion." I took the glass, my fingers brushing against his. A simple touch, but it sent a jolt through my system, a stark reminder of the intimacy we had just agreed to. I took a large swallow, the liquor burning a welcome path down my throat, warming the cold, hollow places inside me. I looked at him over the rim of my glass. He was watching me, his expression a complex mix of concern, determination, and that ever-present reckless glint. "What have we just done, Liam?" I whispered, the reality of it finally beginning to settle. "We've declared war on sensible life choices," he said, a wry smile playing on his lips. He took a sip of his own drink. "And it feels fucking fantastic." A laugh, brittle and surprised, escaped me. "Fantastic? Liam, this is insane. This is the kind of thing that happens in bad movies." "Life is a bad movie most of the time," he countered, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. "The trick is to rewrite the script when you get the chance." And we, my love, just grabbed the pen. "My mother," I said, the thought a fresh wave of panic. "Oh God. My mother. She'll have a heart attack. She adores Mark. Or the idea of Mark, anyway." "Then we'll talk to her," he said, his voice steady. "First thing in the morning. We'll explain." "Explain what?" "That my fiancé was cheating with my sister, so I'm marrying my ex-boyfriend instead? The one who broke my heart and left the country? The one she thinks is a lovely boy but completely unreliable?" He had the decency to wince. "Okay, when you put it like that, it sounds dramatic." "It is dramatic. It's a 5-alarm fire of drama." I set my glass down with a thud, the scotch sloshing. "And the guests, Liam. My family, his family, all their stuffy, judgmental friends. We're going to stand up in front of all of them and what? What exactly is the plan? Do we just announce it? Do we let the priest in on the secret? What about the rings? The vows? The everything?" I was spiraling, my breath coming in short gasps. The sheer logistical enormity of what we were about to do was crashing down on me. Liam waited for my panic to subside, his presence a calm anchor in the storm of my anxiety. When I finally fell silent, breathing heavily, he spoke. "One thing at a time," he said softly. "First we breathe, then we make a list. We are two intelligent, resourceful people. We can outsmart one wedding." His calm was infuriating and also the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. "A list," I repeated, my voice flat. "A list," he confirmed. He got up, found a sleek notepad and a pen that probably cost more than his monthly rent in Berlin, and came back to the sofa. He clicked the pen. Problem 1, the mother. We handle her first. We go to her together before she leaves for the church. We tell her the truth. The whole ugly truth about Mark and Chloe. She's your mother. She'll be on your side. I wanted to believe him. My mother loved security, but she loved me more. I hoped. Problem 2, he continued, writing it down. The officiant. We get to the church early. We find the priest or pastor or whoever he is. We explain the situation to him man to man. We show him the license. We make it a matter of the heart, of divine intervention. Clergy love that stuff. I stared at him, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. He was actually thinking this through. You've lost your mind. But, continue. Problem 3, the guests. He tapped the pen against the notepad. This is the trickiest part. We can't tell them beforehand. The surprise is the whole point. It's the vengeance. So we let them come. We let them sit. And we give them a wedding they will never ever forget. The way he said it with such fierce conviction made a shiver run down my spine. This was for him too. This wasn't just about saving me. It was about reclaiming what we'd lost in the most public, defiant way possible. What about you? I asked quietly. Your life is in Berlin. Your show. You're really going to throw all that away for this? He looked at me and the playful strategist vanished, replaced by the man who had bared his soul minutes ago. Elara, I've had 5 years to build a life without you. I have a career, friends, an apartment, and none of it has ever felt completely right. There was always a piece missing. The piece that was you. When I heard you were getting married, it felt like that piece was being locked away in a vault forever. So no. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally coming home. Tears welled in my eyes again. Damn him. Damn him for knowing exactly what to say. Okay, I whispered, swiping at my tears. The list. We talked for hours, the scotch slowly disappearing as we plotted our coup. We went over every detail. How we would get my things from the penthouse afterward. Liam was staying at a boutique hotel and he said with a blush that he had a king-sized bed. What we would do about the honeymoon, a non-refundable trip to Bora Bora that we decided with giddy defiance we would take. We practiced what we would say to the priest. As the first hints of dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, the practicalities began to morph into something else. The initial white-hot fury had cooled into a steady, determined resolve. The terror was still there, a fluttering in my stomach, but it was now mixed with a wild, intoxicating sense of freedom. I looked at Liam, who was now sprawled on the other end of the sofa, his eyes closed. He looked tired but peaceful. The city was beginning to wake up below us. In a few hours, the hairdresser and makeup artist would be here. The photographer. The florist delivering my bouquet. Liam, I said softly. He opened his eyes, those green pools instantly alert and focused on me. Thank you, I said. It was inadequate for what he had done, for the lifeline he had thrown me, for the revolution he had started in my soul. He didn't say you're welcome. He just looked at me, his gaze deep and knowing. We should try to get some sleep. Big day today. He stood up and offered me his hand. I took it and he pulled me to my feet. We stood there for a moment, face to face in the quiet pre-dawn light. The space between us crackled with the unspoken history and the impossible future. Where should I? He gestured vaguely towards the guest rooms. The one on the left is clean, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Chloe. She was in the other one. He nodded, understanding. He didn't move. His eyes dropped to my lips for a fleeting second, and my heart hammered against my ribs. The memory of his kiss from a lifetime ago was suddenly vivid and potent. But he didn't kiss me. He just squeezed my hand and released it. Good night, Elara, he said. Or good morning. See you at the altar. He turned and walked down the hallway, leaving me standing alone in the living room. I listened to the soft click of the guest room door closing. The penthouse was silent once more, but the silence was different now. It wasn't empty. It was full of potential. Full of madness. Full of a second chance that had arrived in the middle of the night, dressed in a leather jacket and carrying a marriage license. I walked back to my bedroom and looked at the wedding dress. It was no longer a shroud. It was a costume for the performance of a lifetime. I was no longer a victim. I was the co-author of a new story. Sleep was a futile endeavor. I maybe managed an hour of fitful dozing, my mind a whirlwind of fragmented images. Mark's guilty face, Chloe's tears, Liam's determined eyes, the cold feel of the Scotch glass. When my alarm blared at 7 a.m., it was almost a relief. The day of reckoning had officially begun. I showered, the hot water doing little to soothe the nervous energy buzzing under my skin. As I was wrapping myself in a plush robe, the intercom buzzed. It was the hairstylist and makeup artist, a cheerful, efficient duo named Stacy and Marco. My heart leapt into my throat. The first wave of the wedding machine was here. I let them in, forcing a bright, brittle smile. Good morning. Come in, come in. Ooh, the bride-to-be. Marco trilled, air-kissing my cheeks. You look like you didn't sleep a wink, darling. Not to worry, we are miracle workers. Stacy, quieter and more observant, gave me a slightly more searching look. Big day jitters? She asked sympathetically. You have no idea, I said, my voice a little too high-pitched. I led them into the master suite, where my dress still hung in silent, lace-covered judgment. As they began setting up their equipment, spreading out pots of foundation and curling irons, I felt like a prisoner preparing for her own execution. The plan that had seemed so brilliant and daring in the dark, Scotch-fueled hours of the night now felt like a form of insanity. What was I doing? The intercom buzzed again. The florist with my bouquet and the boutonnieres. My stomach clenched. I had to get rid of them all before Liam emerged from the guest room. The last thing I needed was a rumor mill starting before we even got to the church. I hurried to the intercom. Just leave them with the concierge, please. I'll be down to get them shortly, I said, trying to sound breezy and unconcerned. Are you sure, Ms. Vance? I have specific instructions from Mr. Sterling too. With the concierge is perfect, thank you. I insisted, cutting off the call. I turned back to see Marco and Stacy exchanging a curious glance. Brides were usually micromanaging every petal on their wedding day. Just a lot on my mind, I said weakly. I needed to get them out. I needed to get to my mother. The list was crumbling. You know, I said, inspiration striking. I'm feeling a little claustrophobic here. And the light is better at my mother's house. Would you two mind terribly if we did hair and makeup there? I'll pay for the extra travel, of course. Marco looked delighted. A change of scenery. How fabulous. A little pre-ceremony family time. Stacy looked less convinced, but she nodded. Whatever the bride wants. 15 minutes later, I had bundled them and their entire kit into a taxi, promising to meet them at my mother's house in 30 minutes. I left a note for Liam on the kitchen counter, scrawled in a hurried hand, "Gone to my mom's to get ready and tell her. Meet you at the church. Don't be late. E." As the taxi pulled away from the curb, I looked up at the penthouse. Somewhere up there, Liam was sleeping, utterly unaware that I had just fled the scene. But it wasn't fleeing, I told myself. It was strategic repositioning. My mother lived in the cozy, slightly shabby suburban house I grew up in. Pulling into the driveway felt like crossing a border into a different, simpler world. The sight of her rose bushes, slightly overgrown, and the welcome mat I'd bought her for Mother's Day sent a fresh wave of guilt and anxiety through me. She opened the door before I could even knock, her face wreathed in smiles, her best dress already on. "Alara. Sweetheart. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at the penthouse? Where's your glam squad?" "Mom," I said, my voice cracking. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered. She saw the truth on my face, the strain I couldn't hide. "What's wrong? Is it Mark? Did something happen?" I stepped inside, the familiar scent of lemon polish and baking grounding me for a moment. I led her to the living room, to the same floral sofa where I'd cried over Liam all those years ago. And I told her everything. I started with the hollow feeling, the sense that I was making a mistake. I saw the disappointment flash in her eyes, the fear of lost security. But I pressed on. I told her about going to the guest wing, about what I saw, about what I heard. I watched the color drain from her face, her hand flying to her mouth. "Chloe," she whispered, horrified. "And Mark? Oh, my poor baby." Then I took a deep breath and told her the rest. About Liam showing up. About his proposition. About our plan. The horror on her face transformed into sheer, unadulterated disbelief. "You're going to do what?" "Mom, listen to me. Liam came back for me. He got a license. He still loves me. And I hesitated, the confession feeling both terrifying and true. "I think I never stopped loving him. This isn't just about revenge. It's about a second chance." "This is not a second chance, Alara. This is a public spectacle. You'll be a laughingstock. They'll say you're unstable, that you snapped. And Liam? He left you once. What's to stop him from leaving again when this adventure wears off?" Her words hit their mark. They were the same fears screaming in the back of my own mind. "Mom, I know it's crazy. But marrying Mark was the safe choice, and it was a lie. It was a cage. This is real. It's messy and scary, but it's real. And I need you to be on my side. I can't do this without you." I looked at her, pleading with my eyes. This was the woman who had worked double shifts to pay for my art supplies, who had held me while I sobbed when my father left, who had fought through illness with a ferocity that humbled me. She was a fighter. And I needed her to fight for me now, for my happiness, not just my security. She was silent for a long time, looking at her hands, then at me, then at my father's picture on the mantelpiece. A single tear traced a path through her carefully applied powder. "When your father left," she said, her voice thick, "I was so terrified. I thought my life was over. I clung to safety, to predictability for dear life. And I taught you to do the same. I wanted so desperately for you to have the stability I lost." She looked up at me, her eyes shining with tears. "But I never wanted you to be as unhappy as I was. I never wanted you to feel trapped in a gilded cage." She reached out and took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "If you're sure this is what you want, if you truly believe this Liam is your chance at real happiness and not just a reaction to the pain, then I will be there. I will stand with you." "But Alara, are you sure?" Was I sure? I thought of Liam's hand in mine, the warmth and certainty of it. I thought of the way he looked at me as if I were a masterpiece, not an asset. I thought of the cold, sterile perfection of my life with Mark, and the vibrant, chaotic, passionate world Liam represented. I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who believed in grand gestures and messy love. "Yes, Mom," I said, my voice firm and clear for the first time all morning. "I'm sure." She took a deep, shuddering breath, then nodded, a determined look settling on her face. "Okay then. Let's get you ready for your wedding." Just then the doorbell rang. It was Stacy and Marco. My mother stood up, squaring her shoulders. She wiped her tears and fixed a bright hostess smile on her face. "Leave them to me," she said, a glint in her eye. "I'll make sure you look absolutely radiant when you marry your artist." As she went to answer the door, I felt a weight lift from my soul. I had my mother. I had my resolve. And soon I would have Liam. The storm was coming. And for the first time I was ready to stand in the rain. The car sent to take me to the church was a sleek, black limousine, another part of Mark's meticulously planned production. Sitting in the back, encased in layers of lace and silk, I felt like a bomb in a Tiffany box. My mother sat beside me, her hand tightly clutching mine. She had been a rock, managing Stacy and Marco with a flawless performance of maternal excitement, all while shooting me looks of fierce, unwavering solidarity. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she said, her voice a little tremulous. "He's a lucky man." She didn't specify which he she meant, and I didn't ask. The drive was a blur. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, the sound loud in the silent, plush interior of the car. I clutched my bouquet of white roses and calla lilies, their pristine perfection feeling like a mockery. My veil was down, shielding my face from the world, creating a tiny private space where I could fall apart. What if Liam had changed his mind? What if he'd woken up, seen my note, and realized the sheer magnitude of the insanity he had proposed? What if he'd simply fled, leaving me to walk into that church alone, to face the music of my own cancelled wedding? The limo pulled up to the back entrance of the old stone church. It was a picture-perfect scene. Ivy climbed the walls, sunlight dappled through the ancient oak trees, and the soft murmur of the gathered guests drifted from within. I could hear the organist practicing the processional. This was it. My mother squeezed my hand one last time before she got out to take her seat inside. I love you, Alara. No matter what happens. And then I was alone. The wedding coordinator, a flustered-looking woman named Brenda with a headset, tapped on the window. I rolled it down. Ms. Vance. Oh, you look stunning. We're just about ready for you. Mr. Sterling is already at the altar. Are you ready? Mr. Sterling is already at the altar. The words were a punch to the gut. He was here. He had called my bluff. Or worse, he thought I had come to my senses and was going through with it. The arrogance of that thought sent a fresh wave of fury through me, burning away the last remnants of fear. I took a deep, steadying breath. I'm ready. I stepped out of the limo, the heavy train of my dress pooling on the gravel path. Brenda fussed with my veil and train, then positioned me at the top of the short flight of steps that led to the church's side entrance. The massive, carved wooden door was closed. On the other side was my future. The organ music swelled, shifting into the unmistakable solemn notes of the bridal march. The processional had begun. Dum-dum-dum. This was the moment. The point of no return. The large door began to swing open, operated by an unseen usher. A wall of sound and light hit me. The church was packed. Hundreds of faces turned towards me, a sea of expectant smiles and glistening eyes. The air was thick with the scent of roses and perfume. And at the far end of the long rose-petal-strewn aisle, standing tall and confident before the altar, was Mark. He was turned, looking back at me, a small, triumphant smile on his perfectly composed face. He thought he had won. He thought I was walking towards him. My eyes scanned the front pew. My mother sat back rigid, her face pale but resolute. Next to her, the space where Chloe should have been was empty. A glaring, silent accusation. And then I saw him. He was standing in the shadow of a large stone pillar, off to the left side of the church, near the front. He was wearing a dark, well-fitted suit, a stark contrast to the mourning coats of the groomsmen. He wasn't trying to hide, but he wasn't drawing attention to himself either. He was just waiting. Our eyes met across the crowded church. His gaze was intense, unwavering, a green beacon in the storm of my panic. He gave me the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. I'm here. You can do this. The music played on. Everyone was waiting. Mark's smile was beginning to look strained. I hadn't moved. I felt the eyes of the congregation on me, their smiles starting to falter, replaced by confusion. A soft whisper rippled through the crowd. This was it. The first step. I tightened my grip on my bouquet, the stems digging into my palms. I lifted my chin. And I took a step forward. But I didn't walk down the center of the aisle. I took a sharp right, my satin heels clicking on the stone floor, and I began to walk along the side of the church, skirting the pews. A collective, stunned gasp went up from the congregation. The organist faltered, the processional stumbling to a discordant halt. The whispers became a roar of confusion. I kept my eyes fixed on Liam. I didn't look at Mark. I didn't look at the horrified, bewildered faces of the guests. I just walked, my heart hammering a wild, triumphant rhythm in my chest. I saw Mark turn fully, his smile gone, replaced by a look of dawning, horrified comprehension. I saw him take a step forward as if to intercept me, but one of his groomsmen put a restraining hand on his arm. The world narrowed to the space between Liam and me. With every step, I shed the weight of expectation, the fear of judgment, the ghost of the woman I was supposed to be. I reached him. I stopped in front of him, the pillar at our backs, the entire church staring at us in stunned silence. I could feel the heat of their collective gaze, but I didn't care. Liam looked down at me, his eyes blazing with a mixture of awe, pride, and sheer, unadulterated love. A slow, breathtaking smile spread across his face. "You're late," he whispered, his voice for my ears only. "You're lucky I showed up at all," I whispered back, a hysterical bubble of laughter threatening to escape. He reached out and gently lifted the veil from my face, tucking it back over my head. His fingers brushed my cheek, a touch so tender it made my breath catch. The priest, an elderly man with a kind, bewildered face, hurried over to us. "My child, what is the meaning of this? Is there a problem?" Mark finally broke free from his groomsmen and stormed towards us, his face a thundercloud. "This is an outrage. Alara, have you lost your mind?" Liam stepped slightly in front of me, a protective gesture. There's been a change of plan, Father. Mark, he said, his voice calm but carrying through the silent church. The wedding is proceeding. But I'll be the one marrying her. The church erupted. Gasps, shouts, the sound of people standing up to get a better view. It was chaos. The priest looked utterly lost. But, the license, the banns. Liam reached into his inside pocket and produced the document, handing it to the priest. The license is in order. It's in our names. Elara Vance and Liam Sawyer. The priest looked down at the paper, his eyes wide. Mark let out a sound of pure fury. This is illegal. It's a sham. She's my fiancé. No, I said, finding my voice. It rang out, clear and strong in the cavernous space. I turned to face the congregation, to face Mark. I was your fiancé. Until I found you with my half-sister last night. This wedding was built on a lie. But it doesn't have to be a complete waste. I turned back to Liam, my heart so full I thought it would burst. I'm not here to marry a lie. I'm here to marry the man I should have married years ago. The chaos in the church subsided into a rapt, shocked silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Liam took both my hands in his. His were warm and steady. Mine were trembling. The priest, after a long, stunned moment, looked from the license to our faces, to the sheer, defiant love radiating between us. A slow, amazed smile spread across his weathered face. He seemed to remember why he had entered the clergy in the first place. He cleared his throat. The sound echoed in the silence. Well then, he said, his voice gaining strength. Shall we begin? Dearly beloved. And as he started the ceremony with my ex-fiancé fuming a few feet away and 300 guests watching in stunned disbelief, Liam and I said our vows. We promised to love, to cherish, to honor. We promised to be partners in chaos and in calm. When the priest said, "You may now kiss the bride," Liam didn't hesitate. He cupped my face in his hands and kissed me. It wasn't a chaste, ceremonial kiss. It was a kiss of possession, of promise, of 5 years of lost time and a lifetime of future possibilities. It was a kiss that held the fury of the storm we had just weathered and the peace of the calm that would follow. The church remained silent for a second longer, and then from the front pew, my mother began to clap. Slowly at first, then with more conviction. A few other people, perhaps those who had always doubted Mark or those who were simply romantics at heart, joined in. The applause grew, hesitant at first, then becoming a wave of sound that filled the ancient space. It wasn't the wedding anyone had expected. But as Liam pulled away, his forehead resting against mine, his green eyes shining with unshed tears, I knew with every fiber of my being that it was the only wedding that ever should have been. We had taken the ruins of a broken dream and built a new one, right there in front of God and everyone. And it was just the beginning. The applause felt like a baptism, washing away the shame and the fear, anointing us in our shared madness. But it couldn't last. As the sound died down, the reality of the situation reasserted itself with a vengeance. Mark shoved his way past the stunned groomsmen, his face a mask of such pure, unadulterated rage it was almost unrecognizable. He didn't even look at me. All his fury was directed at Liam. "You ruined this," he snarled, his voice a low, venomous whisper that carried in the hushed church. "You think this is a game? I will destroy you. I will bury you in lawsuits until you're painting on cardboard boxes under a bridge." Liam, to his credit, didn't flinch. He simply kept my hand firmly in his, a solid, unshakable anchor. He looked Mark dead in the eye, his expression not of anger but of pity. "You've already lost, Sterling," Liam said, his voice calm and clear. "You lost the moment you betrayed her. You can try to sue me, but you can't sue me for loving her. And you can't take this away from us." He lifted our joined hands. "All the money in the world can't buy what we just did here today." The priest, looking deeply alarmed, stepped between them. "Gentlemen, please. This is a house of God. This is not the time or the place." But the place was already in an uproar. Guests were on their feet, phones were out, recording the unprecedented drama. The whispers were no longer whispers but a cacophony of shocked exclamations. I saw Mark's parents, their faces pale with humiliation and anger, quickly ushering their relatives out a side door. My mother was being surrounded by a mix of concerned and curious aunts. It was a circus. And we were the main attraction. Liam leaned close to my ear. "We should go. Now." I nodded, my earlier bravado beginning to fray at the edges under the intensity of the stares and the looming threat of Mark's wrath. The plan had only ever extended to the ceremony. We had made no plans for the aftermath. The photographer, a brave soul, was still snapping pictures, a look of bewildered excitement on his face. He was probably thinking of the Pulitzer. Liam grabbed my hand tightly. This way. He led me not back down the aisle we had scandalized, but towards a small discreet door near the altar, likely used by the clergy. The priest, seeing our intention, gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, moving to block Mark's path as we slipped through the door. We found ourselves in a dim, quiet sacristy, filled with the scent of old wood and candle wax. The sounds of the chaos in the main church were muffled, a distant storm. For a moment we just stood there, breathing heavily, leaning against the wall. The adrenaline was receding, leaving me shaking and lightheaded. I looked down at my beautiful, expensive wedding dress, now the costume for the most audacious act of my life. And then I started to laugh. It was a wild, slightly unhinged sound that echoed in the small room. Liam looked at me, a grin spreading across his face. What's so funny? I was just thinking about the reception, I choked out between laughs. The salmon en croûte is probably getting cold. He threw his head back and laughed, a rich, full-bodied sound that seemed to shake the dust from the rafters. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight against his chest, and I buried my face in the rough wool of his suit jacket, still laughing, tears of hysteria and relief streaming down my face. We did it, he murmured into my hair, his voice thick with emotion. We actually did it. We're insane, I said, pulling back to look at him. We are completely, certifiably insane. Maybe, he agreed, his hands cupping my face, his thumbs wiping away my tears. But we're insane together. Mr. and Mrs. Sawyer. The word sent a thrill through me. Mrs. Sawyer. It sounded so much more real, so much more right than Mrs. Sterling ever had. The door creaked open and my mother slipped inside, closing it quickly behind her. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide. Well, she said, leaning against the door as if to barricade it. That was something. Mom, I'm so sorry for the spectacle, I said, the guilt returning. Sorry. She shook her head, a slow, amazed smile spreading across her face. Alara, that was the most magnificent, brave thing I have ever seen in my life. The look on Patricia Sterling's face was worth every penny of the therapy I'm probably going to need. She came forward and hugged me fiercely. I am so proud of you. Over her shoulder I saw Liam watching us, his expression soft. We need to get you two out of here, my mother said, releasing me and switching into practical mode. Mark is fuming and the guests, are circling. Your car is still out front, but it's surrounded. Liam pulled out his phone. I'll call an Uber. We can go out the back. 20 minutes later, after a comical and undignified scramble through a church basement and out a delivery entrance, we were in the back of a Toyota Corolla, speeding away from the scene of the crime. I was still in my full wedding regalia, the massive train bunched up on my lap, and Liam was in his suit, his tie loosened. We must have been a sight. The driver, a young guy with headphones, kept glancing at us in the rearview mirror but to his credit said nothing. Where to? Liam asked me softly. The hotel. I thought of the sterile, anonymous hotel room, of the penthouse that was no longer my home. I thought of the non-refundable honeymoon suite in Bora Bora, and the fact that our passports were both, miraculously, in my purse and his jacket pocket respectively. We had, in our chaotic planning, thought of that. But that felt like running away. And I was done running. No, I said, a new certainty filling me. Take us to the airport. Liam's eyebrows shot up. The airport. We have tickets. We have a honeymoon booked. I am not letting that man ruin one more thing for me. For us. I looked at him, my partner in crime, my husband. Let's go to Bora Bora. A slow, dazzling smile spread across his face. You're the most wonderful, unpredictable woman in the world. He gave the driver the new destination. As the city skyline shrank in the distance, I leaned my head against Liam's shoulder. The events of the last 24 hours felt like a lifetime. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the impossible proposal, the defiant wedding. It was a whirlwind that had torn my life apart and reassembled it into a new, terrifying and beautiful shape. I was no longer the woman engaged to Mark Sterling, living a safe, suffocating life. I was Alara Sawyer, wife of a brilliant, unpredictable artist, and the co-author of my own chaotic, glorious story. Liam laced his fingers through mine, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "Are you happy?" he asked, his voice quiet. I looked out the window at the open road ahead, at the limitless sky. I thought of the future not as a predetermined path, but as a blank canvas, waiting for us to paint it together. It was terrifying. It was uncertain. It was everything I had been taught to avoid. But it was real. I turned to him, my heart so full it ached. I brought his hand to my lips and kissed it. "I'm free," I said. "And that's so much better than happy." And as the car carried us towards the airport, towards our future, I knew it was the truest thing I had ever said. The revenge was complete. The second love had begun. And our story was just getting started. The silence in the sacristy was a stark contrast to the roaring chaos we had left in the nave. But while Liam and I made our escape, that chaos was only just beginning to crystallize into a cold, hard reality for Mark and Chloe. Mark stood frozen at the head of the aisle, the rose petals now feeling like shards of glass under his polished shoes. The applause that had followed our kiss was a physical blow, each clap a nail in the coffin of his reputation. He watched us disappear through the small door, his mind a white-hot static of fury and humiliation. He had been played. Not just left at the altar but utterly and publicly outmaneuvered. The narrative was no longer his to control. "Mark." His father's voice, low and venomous, cut through the buzzing in his ears. Alistair Sterling's face was granite, his eyes chips of ice. "My office. No. And get that girl out of this church." He didn't look at Chloe. He didn't need to. The dismissal was absolute. Chloe, still standing near the front pew where she'd been hiding, flinched as if struck. The girl. The shame washed over her, hot and suffocating. She looked around at the remaining guests, their faces a gallery of pity, scorn, and morbid curiosity. There were no allies here. She was utterly alone. Day 1, the social media inferno. By the time Mark was slumped in the leather chair of his father's corner office, the first videos were already trending. The algorithms feasted on the drama. #runaway bride, #wedding crasher, #Sterling scandal. But the most damning clip, the one that went truly viral, was not of Liam and me. It was a close-up, shaky but clear, of my face as I addressed the congregation. "I was your fiancé. Until I found you with my half-sister last night." The audio was crystal. The truth was out. Mark's phone began to vibrate incessantly on the polished mahogany desk. Calls from business partners, board members, the press. He ignored them, staring blankly as his father coldly outlined the damage control. It was too late for control. The fortress of his reputation was crumbling in real time. Across town, Chloe sat on the floor of her apartment, her phone switched off, buried under a cushion. She had turned it on for just a moment, only to be met with a deluge of messages. Vile insults from strangers. "How could you?" Texts from acquaintances, and a single devastating message from our mother. "Do not contact me or Alara ever again. You are no daughter of mine." The vibrant, social world she had so carefully curated had evaporated in an instant. She was a pariah. Week 1, the professional fallout. At Sterling Holdings, the fallout was immediate and brutal. The board called an emergency meeting. Mark's judgment was called into question. Not just his personal morals but his fundamental intelligence. How could he have been so reckless? How could he have lost control of a situation so completely? The stock price dipped. A major merger, one Mark had been spearheading, was put on indefinite hold. The phrase reputational risk was used again and again. His father, to save the company bearing their name, had no choice. He accepted Mark's resignation, a face-saving measure that fooled no one. Mark was out. The corner office, the legacy he had spent his life building towards, was gone. Chloe, who worked in PR for a luxury fashion brand, was summoned to HR on Monday morning. Her boss, a woman who valued appearances above all else, didn't even look at her. "The brand and your personal brand are no longer aligned," she said smoothly, sliding a severance package across the desk. "Clean out your desk. Security will escort you out." The humiliation was complete. Month 1, the isolation. The silence in Mark's new rented penthouse was oppressive. The friends he'd had, the sycophants and social climbers, had vanished. His calls went unanswered. Invitations dried up. He was toxic. He spent his days staring at the financial news, watching stories about his father's strategic restructuring of the company he was supposed to inherit. He was a ghost in his own life. He hired the best lawyers, of course. They sent threatening letters to Liam and me, full of legalese about breach of promise and emotional distress. Our lawyer, a sharp, unflappable woman we'd hired upon our return from Bora Bora, sent back a one-line response. We look forward to discovery and depositions, particularly from Ms. Chloe Vance. The lawsuits vanished. The threat of having Chloe testify under oath, of having every sordid detail of their affair laid bare in a public courtroom, was a risk even Mark's ego wouldn't allow him to take. Chloe, cut off from the family and her social circle, was drowning in debt. Her lifestyle had been funded by a combination of her salary and generous gifts from Mark. Both were gone. She was forced to move out of her chic apartment, selling designer clothes and handbags online for a fraction of their value to make rent on a dismal studio in a part of town she would have once sneered at. Month 6. The bottom. I heard the details in fragments from my mother, who heard from a friend of a friend. The kind of gossip that finds its way to you when you're the subject of a legendary scandal. Mark had been seen at a high-stakes poker game, a desperate attempt to win back some of his capital. He'd lost badly. Rumor had it he was leveraged to the hilt, selling off assets to cover his debts. The sterling fortune was vast, but his access to it was now heavily controlled by his furious father. He was on an allowance, a humiliating leash for a man who had commanded millions. He was also drinking. Heavily. Spotted alone at bars he used to own, his impeccable suit now wrinkled, his eyes hollow. The golden boy was tarnished, a cautionary tale whispered about at country clubs. Chloe's descent was quieter but deeper. She took a job as a receptionist at a rundown dental office, the only place that hadn't bothered to Google her name. The glamorous, fun-loving girl was gone, replaced by a gaunt, nervous woman who jumped at loud noises. She tried to reach out to me once, a long, rambling email full of apologies and self-pity. I deleted it without finishing it. Some betrayals are too profound for forgiveness. Her punishment was the life she had to live now. A life of profound ordinariness and loneliness, a universe away from the glittering future she had schemed for. 1 year later, the ghost. Liam and I were in a small gallery in Berlin, celebrating the opening of his latest show. The paintings were vibrant, full of light and wild, bold strokes, a reflection of the life we were building together. We were happy. Truly, messily, passionately happy. During a quiet moment, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Patricia Sterling died," she said without preamble. "Heart attack." I felt a distant pang of sadness for the woman, but no surprise. The stress of the scandal had aged her terribly. "The funeral is next week," Mom continued. "The gossip columns are saying Mark isn't expected to inherit the majority stake in the company. The board blocked it. His cousin, Stephen, is being groomed as the new CEO. Mark had lost everything. His reputation, his career, his legacy, and now his birthright. He was a Sterling in name only. As for Chloe, my mother had heard she'd moved to another state, trying to disappear. She'd changed her last name, taken a job as a waitress. She was a ghost, erasing the person she had been because that person had become unbearable to live with. I looked across the room at Liam, who was laughing with a collector, a glass of wine in his hand, his eyes alight. He caught my gaze and smiled, a private, loving look that still made my heart flip. I thought of Mark and Chloe not with vengeance but with a quiet, final sense of closure. Their destruction wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a slow, inexorable unraveling. They had built their happiness on a foundation of betrayal and lies, and when that foundation crumbled, everything they were and everything they wanted collapsed with it. They had been each other's accomplices in the dark, but in the harsh light of day, they had no one to blame but themselves. Their punishment was the life they had to live after. A life of shadows, regret, and the relentless, echoing knowledge that they had been the architects of their own ruin. Our revenge wasn't the scene in the church. That was just the first stroke. The true destruction was the life sentence of consequences they now had to serve, alone. And as I walked over to join my husband, slipping my hand into his, I knew we wouldn't waste another single thought on them. Our canvas was waiting, and it was filled with nothing but light. The end.